Hey, how's everybody doing today? I don't have my fancy lights. I'm actually moving. I'm going to be driving. It's going to take, I have 30 hours of driving to do. Man, it's going to be tough, but it's all right. We're going to do this live stream, and then eventually I'll have wherever I'm staying, I'll set up the lights and make it awesome. But who needs the lights? The most important part is just to hang out, talk about code. So today we're going to continue working on a project. Let me know if you guys could hear me, see me in the comments before we jump in to the craziness, and also if my screen sharing works. It's like, can you even see my screen? I have no idea. Can you hear me when I'm sharing my screen? I have no idea. You know, that's the professional the professional stream we're running, but I'm guessing you guys could see my screen. So this is our basic application. We're making slow progress, slowly working. We are creating this website called DevHunt. You'll be able to share your projects like you could see here. You could upvote, like stuff or dislike. You could see the details. You could leave comments if you're logged in. You could see the demo of the website. You could hit all these links, and you're able to add projects. We also have, last week we added this blog section, and this is using Markdown that it's parsing to HTML and CSS. So eventually we could style it and make it look nicer and better. Right now I'm not worried about styling. I'm actually more worried about functionality. And you could see we are getting posts from our backend, which is we're using Strapi for ourselves. So you can see we have 3 posts, and those are the articles we are able to get from our backend using GraphQL. And we have this dashboard. Again, it's not organized. Eventually, I'm going to make the dashboard look really, really nice. But right now, I'm more concerned with the functionality. And if you're wondering how or what I'm using to kind of help me figure out how eventually my app's going to look like, I literally just go on ThemeForest and I look up for some great dashboards. I actually know which one I'm going to copy, and I already purchased it. I purchased it because I want to support the creator of the thing, but I'm going to use, and you don't have to purchase it. You could literally check it out for free on ThemeForest, but I'm going to be using the Add Minto dashboard, and eventually I'm going to style this application to look, we want dark. Let's do dark, whatever. Hold on, where are the demos at? Where are the demos? Live preview, come on. Preview item, here we go. Eventually it's going to look this beautiful. But for now, we're not worried about it making it look too beautiful. Dark mode, oh, come on. Dark mode, not light mode, dark mode. Why are you complaining? Anyway, this is light mode. We're gonna make it dark mode, but this is how eventually our application is going to look like. And what we're going to work on today is creating this table with React. Again, I'm not going to focus too much on styling it, but we're going to work on creating something similar to this with React. And the idea is that we want to create it in a way where, I don't want to define the project name, start date, due date ahead of time. I want to make sure that it will be dynamically generated based on the children of the table. So it'll be a pretty dynamic table. At least that's what I'm hoping for. And so that's what we're going to work on. And of course, if you guys have questions about anything, let me know. And I see the comments already. You guys could hear me, which is fantastic. See me, that is fantastic. Brian, what's up? Mayor124, all seems to work. Where's the hat? Yep, I need a hat, because I have terrible haircut. I cut my own hair, guys. And this is ridiculous haircut. I should probably have a professional cut my hair. Once my fiance gets here, I'm gonna stop cutting my own hair because that's not how it works. But we're going to get into the project. And so for now, we're just gonna stick our, yeah. It's what are we building today? We're gonna build our amazing table like this. So that's what we're gonna at least attempt to do. So we're gonna stick it in our application here into our dashboard. Again, this is not organized. I'm just going for a basic functionality. So we'll make a space for it at the top here. So let me go into my code editor here. And so currently we're gonna go into our dashboard page, and I'm just gonna kind of show you what we have here so far. And if it's too zoomed in, let me know. So this is our dashboard. Currently inside our dashboard, we have our form to submit a new project, and I'm probably going to eventually move the form out of here, but for now I'm going to keep it in here. But I'm going to make a space here above the 2 columns, and I'm just going to start with a div. It doesn't matter, we'll eventually style it and make it nice. And I'm just going to put, you know, h1 for now, table will go here. So if you're familiar with HTML and CSS tables, you know, so table will go here, but we're going to build it with React. And the idea here is, and I'm gonna kind of like draw it out here. This is not gonna work yet. Data, whatever, is gonna pass some data. And again, this is not gonna work because none of these components exist, but I just wanna kind of show you kind of like this idea of what I want to be able to do. So, god damn it, delete this, right? Of course table doesn't exist. I know table doesn't exist. Stop complaining. But actually, you know what? I'm gonna kind of, again, we're gonna factor all this stuff out, refactor all this stuff out. I'm just gonna, so our application doesn't complain, turn, you know, p tag table for now, just so it doesn't complain. And then we're gonna pass some data. It's going to be an array of something. For now, I'm just gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for now, so it doesn't complain. So I could format this. Yeah. Let's see, format document, make it pretty. And so the idea is we're going to be passing children into our table. Our table is going to take in children, and it'll dynamically will build our rows, and each child that we're going to pass in here is going to be a column, and that's what we're going to work on. So I'm going to kind of write out the general idea, and then we're going to kind of talk about it, how to do it. And we're going to have something here called table column, which still doesn't exist, but we're going to create it. And this table is going to take the name of the source of what we want, you know, to display here. Like, let's say this will be ID, and then we're going to pass in a label, which will be the name of the thing that we want to do. And eventually we'll talk about it in more details in a second, but I just want to kind of give you guys this general outline of what we're going to build. And this is going to be the name, and table column doesn't exist. So for now, I'm just going to make table column component here, and it's just going to return a div, and we're just going to return in this structure the props, and everything's going to be a prop here. So but for now, like, I'm just gonna, so like it doesn't break. What am I doing here? I didn't know. This is not an arrow function. This is a regular function. Return. And again, just so the code doesn't crash, but we're going to refactor this. Props. I can't spell to save my life. So this is so the code doesn't break. And let's see if it broke the code here. Where's my screen here? So no, everything still compiles. Let me take a look at the comments. Hello, North Chimp. How you doing, my friend? Good to see you. Again, so we're going to have something like a table column, and this, right, if we pass one child, it's going to basically show one item in our column. If I pass like a bunch of other stuff like, you know, title, and we'll pretend this is for our bug tracker or project management or whatever table you want it to be, and we'll say this is going to be start date, which is going to be the start date. And then here our label is going to be a name. So the point is we want to be able to pass these items into the column, and we want the columns and rows to be generated automatically. You know, that's like the idea. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But the idea is we want to have a dynamic enough, form when we pass data inside here, and we match it by the source name. It's going to generate that table for us. So we're going to see how that works, how this is going to go. We're going to kind of keep working. I have like one monitor now, so it's kind of like annoying. So I have to constantly like switch and check my screen to see stuff, but that's okay. That's okay. We're going to keep going. So the first thing, and that's the general idea. So we're going to have our table. We're going to have our table column, kind of like I showed you as an example here. So let's go ahead and create our table component, and I'm going to kind of create everything here, and then we'll eventually refactor everything. So this is going to be our table component that I kind of started, and what we want to have access to this, because we're passing items as children here, we're going to make sure that we get access to the children, and then we also want to get access to the source data, which is going to be, I call it data, but I could call it data source or source data, whatever. Let's call it source data. Why not? Just so we don't get confused, make it more specific. So, and we want to pass, where we at, children and source data. And so the idea here is that we want to at least return our children. And when you pass children into your parent component, is going to display those children. So if I just return children, or at least let's console log, see what it says. Console log dot children. And let's take a look. It's a good sign that our application is not broken yet. Let's take a look what we get in the console. So we get an array of, and there's a bunch of weird stuff here. Don't worry about all the details here, but just know that we're getting 3 items because we're passing 3 different components as children here. So as you can see, we're passing 3 items. And that's why we are getting 3 items in our inspector here. We get an array, and we're getting 3 items. And if you could see in the props, we have the source ID and label ID. If we go to the next item, we have the title and the project name. So we're getting those props, which is really nice. So what we want to do is we want to iterate through the items, and we want to do something with them. And so each item that we have here, and let me look at the comments here. Okay, great. Each item is going to be a column. So let's go into our component here, and we're going to create a constant, and we're going to call it column. And what we're going to do, we're going to take all the items from children, and we're going to use React.children, and we're going to convert it to an array. And so if we, and I guess we should call it columns. So let's console log columns and see, is this even a necessary step? Or can we just get away using children? And I think by doing it and converting to an array like we're doing now, we'll be able to use our map or array methods to it. So let's see here how different this looks. Columns. So let's take a look at our application. So columns and children looks the same way. And so now I'm like wondering, do I have to even convert it to an array? I don't think I do, but we'll test it out. We're going to see if we could map through the children and return the items here. So let's kind of go ahead and try that. So maybe I don't have to do this step here because it seems that children and columns is an array, like children is already an array. So let me just test it out here. And what I'm going to do is I am going to take column, let's take children, and let's do dot map. And what we're going to do, we're going to return child, and we're just going to display a span for now, why not? And we want to get access to our props here. And so I believe it's going to be child.props.label. And let's see what happens here. Does it? So that works. Maybe I don't have to convert it to the array. So notice now we have our ID, our project name, and our start date. And so if you're wondering where that's coming from, let me move this one so like my play music list here. So I guess we don't have to convert it to an array. That's kind of interesting. I think a while ago I tried to map to children, and maybe like I didn't have the right thing, whatever, it didn't work, but nice, it works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just keep it and literally. The thing that I don't like about like using children is because we are like, we want to make the name more kind of like make sense. So maybe I will rename it here as columns, right? Equal. I thought this would allow me to rename it. Why is this complaining about columns any? Let me just kind of do this. Maybe because I'm already declaring it here. Let me get that. Yeah, that's nice. So let me do columns just because I want to be more obvious here. So you're going to do columns. So when people kind of get here, it kind of makes sense rather than a child column, because you're dealing with our items here. So let me just delete this. Delete this. So it should, in theory, still work. Let's take a look here. Refresh. So we'll deal about this in a second, but right now, notice we're getting ID, project. Let me make this bigger. We're getting ID, project name, start date. And what's awesome about this is already being generated dynamically. You know, so whenever I do another table column here, and let's do source equals end date, label end date. Now, if you kind of get here, notice now we have ID, project name, start date, and end date. So it's very easy. Like if I want to remove or add things, I just like could delete it, right? So notice now we have 3 items: ID, project name, and end date. Let me put it back here, and let me know if you guys have any questions. And Kev the dev, disable the GitHub Copilot, lol. No, bro, Copilot is phenomenal. It's amazing. I just keep it on all the time. And the reason I do it is because I just like to see what recommendation it makes, because it's like a grammar correct that makes it a little bit easier. Let me move my camera better. I don't know what's happening here. We have, you know, I'm not in my normal streaming equipment. The reason I like Copilot, because I like how it will recommend certain things, and sometimes like it'll recommend completely wrong things. Sometimes it's right on, but I just like the fact that you get to see like different examples. Hey, engine boy, what's up? It's not like cheating, Kev the dev. And here's an interesting thing. Like somebody says a Copilot is cheating. So if you don't know how to code, I'd like to see you use Copilot and kind of see where it goes. Like you're not gonna, like you need to understand what the code does and see, hey Luke, what's up? And Luke, I find GitHub Copilot sort of annoying. Yeah, you know, like it's, I like it because to me, it just allows me to see some recommendation, and it might be something that I never thought about. So it allows me to kind of be exposed to more code instead of constantly Googling stuff. You know, it's like inline Google. That's what I like about it. And I still can't get my trial. Don't lie, I wish I had it. Yeah, it takes some time. It took me like 3 months to get it. So eventually everybody will have it. It's pretty cool, but like, for instance, for this example that I'm doing here, let me switch back to screen share. Like Copilot is not going to write this if I didn't start writing this, right? Because, you know, this is a pattern that, you know, maybe it's common, but I've never seen anybody else do it. This is something we did at my other job that I worked, and so I kind of want to do it this way. But if I just randomly started making a table component, Copilot would not be able to figure out what to do. But anyway, now we're able to get our items dynamically. So before we style our table, let me just, well, we're going to style it afterwards. So we're getting the source. Let me just double check here. Okay, so this is our table, and what's basically happening here, we're getting our children. This is our children. And what we're doing is we're iterating through all the children, and for each child, we're returning an element. For now, it's span, but we're going to change it in a second. And we literally have access to the props of the children by using columns.prop.label. And you could see it here. See, we have our children, we have our props, and we have access to the label, and that's how it knows to define ID, project name, start date, and what have you. So that's pretty good. So we're on the right track right now. So far on the right track. And let me kind of go back here. And yeah, I'm kind of annoyed that like I didn't factor out this form and put it in a separate file, but I'll do that later. But right now I just want to kind of get to the bread and butter. So we have our table column, and we actually don't want to put anything inside. Oops, God damn it. Put anything inside here because we just want to have access to the props. And I'll show you what we're going to do instead here. So actually, I'm not going to close it there. See, Copilot sometimes just messes you up because it was like, no, you got to close it this way. This is what we want, and you'll see that this still works, right? And the reason why it still works is because we're displaying the items inside the span via mapping over the items and having access to the props. So let me know if you guys are confused about it, because I was a little bit confused about it as well, because why would you make a data column and then you would have your data column component like this? It doesn't really return anything except access to the props. So this is like a way to use your children to pass our props. And then when we iterate through our table, through the children that we're passing via table columns, where we're just passing the props, now we have access to the props. That sounded like a lot of confusing stuff, but well, let me look at the comments here, but that's what we're doing. And Luke says, yeah, it's definitely impressive, just something, sometimes it replaces normal IntelliSense in super annoying way. Yeah, 100%, so it's definitely not perfect, and it does sometimes will do things that you're like, that's not what I want. And you know, it's probably 80% of the time it does normal things normal, and then 20% of the time it breaks stuff. So we have our table, and so what does our table have? Our table has, you know, it should have a table header. It should have, you know, the HTML table elements, right? So we should have a header. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about here, right? If you're not sure, we could use the trusty Google HTML table example. And a lot of times, like, I Google stuff all the time because, like, I'm not no expert. I have no idea. So let's try it yourself. Take a look at the code. So notice how we have our table. They literally don't put, they have a table row here. Where's the table header? Interesting. They're not even using a, oh, here we go. Table header. So we have table header, which has the company, contact, country, which is like the names here. And then you have your table rows with the table data. And that's what we're going to start working on. We're going to start making our super beautiful table header. And so inside our table, where we have access to our items, let's go back to our code here. So inside our table here, right, and I'm gonna kind of delete this for now. It's gonna break stuff. I just wanted to make sure that that works. But the first thing we're gonna return our table, and I'm gonna use style components. So I'm gonna call table styled, which is going to be oops, I gotta put it in the things here. Table styled, which is going to be how we're going to style this eventually. We're not going to put columns in here like they're demonstrating here, but we are just going to create a parent container for us to put stuff inside here. And I like that how it like recommends t-head. It kind of almost like knows what we're trying to do with Copilot. So this is something I would have typed anyway, so it's kind of nice that I don't have to type it. Then we want to have a table row. I actually want now I'm curious how far Copilot's going to do, because at some point I want to be able to map through stuff here, and I want to see, oh wow, it recommends columns.map, but we want to make sure that we set it up as table header, and because I want to have numbers in my table, and you guys will see it. But then for wow, like it's amazing, because this is exactly what I wanted to type. Basically I want to go and iterate through columns, and for each column, right, I want to return a table header. And we have access to, like you saw in this example before, we have access to columns prop.label. And so Copilot is basically typing stuff that I already know I have to type. And so this is kind of nice because it's making my coding much faster, and I'm able to kind of explain the examples for you. So basically this code right here is going to generate our dynamic table header, which will have the names for the columns. And so let me call table styled, and let me kind of create this. Now, like our code is getting ridiculously unruly, so what we're going to do, we're going to actually move stuff out into its separate folder and import it. But for now, just to kind of get stuff working, I wanted to kind of do it this way. And what do we want to return a div on that styled, or is it going to be we should probably make it a table component, right? Table, I was thinking maybe div. And then we could put our styling here, background, I'm just gonna to test it, red, color white. It's probably going to look ugly as hell, white. And let's import style components here. Import styled. No, it's little styled from styled components. And let's see here. So we're going to style our component using styled components. So we created table styled component. We used it as a parent. We have our table header. We are returning a table row. We're going to have a table header, which is going to have the IDs for, which we'll do in a second. And then after that, we're going to have all of our items that we have and pass as children here. So let's take a look here in our code here. Yeah, so notice our styling works now. And so I'm not going to go too crazy here on styling. We'll style everything later. But what I'm able to do now, I want to take a table header element, and let's add some padding on it, I guess. Like something stupid. 10 pixels sounds good. And so now at least it's not too bunched up. So our table header is now being dynamically generated. And what's awesome here, before I look at the comments here, if I do want to add another item here, like I take this here, control copy, control paste, like random name. And so now, like, look, we have our random name. So now we're able to generate these tables dynamically, which gives us a lot of reusability on this table component. So I think this is a great start. Let me take a look at some stuff here. Blah, blah. Yeah, it's definitely impressive. Just something, blah, blah, blah. What if a table column is a styled component? I mean, you're just going to use style component to style it. It's not going to make like a big difference here. Let me put my big fat hat on. I gained so much weight. It's so ridiculous. Like, made my fiance cry how much weight I gained in the past 2 months. But anyway, I got to shrink my head, shrink my body, but that's not anything to do with coding. I just want to tell you, the struggle is real. I'm just following along, trying to keep up. Yeah, you'll always be able to kind of rewatch these streams, and this is just an idea of like kind of giving you the big picture, and like eventually like you could literally go to GitHub. By the way, actually let me go ahead and do that. So a lot of this stuff that I do here, all the code, like some of this stuff is secret because it's work, but some of this code is not secret. So this is not a private repository. This is public repository. Let me actually throw in the comments here. So you could actually look at the code examples as I build this project. You know what I mean? And you have like the code is like the notes. And by me talking about it, maybe you're not going to get everything 100%, but you'll be able to go back and look at the code later and be like, oh, I see what Paul was kind of talking about. By the way, if you like what I do here, like, and you haven't subscribed or smashed the like button, smash the like button because it really makes my feelings like feel better when people like my stuff. And so, like right now, we have these items, but we're not populating the data yet, right? We're just populating the label, and we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. But the first thing, what I wanna do is kind of clean this up. So what I'm gonna do is inside my components here, I'm gonna make a new folder, and I'm gonna call it table. And because this is going to be like the table columns and whatever else you're gonna put in here, it's all going to be in the table components. So I'm going to make a folder, and I'm going to put all those files there. So now I'm going to make a new file, and I'm going to call it table.js, sex, because I like saying JSX. And this is going to be our table component. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move our table component out from here. So let's take this blah 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 function, control exit. Now it's going to break our app, no big deal. Are you guys seeing my screen? Yes, you guys see my screen. Like I have one screen now because I'm moving, and so let me go here, post this bad boy. Let's do export default. And so table style, yeah, we have to import that. Copy it from here. Const table styled, and let's import styled components here. And eventually I'll clean everything up. Right now that dashboard screen is too busy, but it's okay. It's okay. So we could delete this now because we don't need this. Okay. We could delete the console log here. And we are exporting our table. So what I want to go here to our dashboard, and I want to import our table component from our table. Oh, god damn it, table. And so now our code should work. Wait, where's my screen here? Yep, it still works. Let's refresh. And this right here, warning, each child in the list should have a unique key prop. You're going to change that and fix that in a second. In a little bit, we're going to do that. But for now, let's just kind of clean this up. So we have our table. Now I'm going to go back to dashboard. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this table columns, and I'm going to go to my table here and make a separate file called table column.jsx, and I'm going to do here, and I'm going to do export default function table column. Let's go back to our dashboard. let's import not table, table column. And why do I keep pressing enter? And in theory, everything still works. And that's great. So we created two components, just a quick review. We created our table component, which basically takes in children, and it uses the children to dynamically create our header and our rows that we're going to get to in just a second. And then we have our table column, which basically we're just creating a div and we're just passing all the props, so we have access to the props when we are going and iterating through the children here, right? We get access to the props through that component that we created. And if you look at the implementation here, let me just kind of, like, there's a lot of extra stuff that we don't need for this component here. Initial error. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create a card element, and I'm going to, yeah, because this is dashboard, because I was too lazy, I just put the form here. I didn't take the form and made a separate component here. That's fine. So it's fine. You guys could follow me. I'll, in the next live stream, we'll clean this out. But notice we have our table. We're passing our children, which dynamically generates stuff. And just to kind of show you here, I'm going to copy and paste this again. You know, like, I don't have to do anything. Smash like, you know, and when I, you know, smash like, write this here. When we go to our application, notice we have our table, we have our ID, project name, start date, end date, random name, smash like. So that's fantastic. Let me take a look at the comments before I get too wild and out of control. Thank you, Paul. No, thank you guys. You guys are super awesome. I love the fact that you guys watch these coding live streams, because a lot of times people find coding live streams boring, especially from someone who, you know, some random dude on the internet. So I really appreciate the love. I really appreciate you guys, you know, jumping in and kind of supporting the channel. Like, I love it. Regardless, like, how many, like, people jump in, we're going to keep working, because at the end of the day, I want to have this application that eventually goes from something basic that looks like garbage right now, because that's where we all start. You know, like, nobody ever makes a fully flushed out application. It takes time and effort, and I just want to show you the live coding, show you how it works. And so what we're doing in our dashboard, we're trying to build a table that eventually we'll move and put it where it needs to go. And this is what we have so far. So the next thing we want to do is we want to have a table row. So we have the column, right? We have the columns for each row. But what we want to do is when we iterate through these children, we want to create a row that's going to populate all these items inside of it. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's first start by creating another component called table row. So I'm going to go to my components, table, new file, and I'm going to call this table row and JSX. And what we're going to do, RFC, I export file table row. So this is going to be our table row. We're going to pass inside here, we want the row data itself, we want the columns, and we want the index. So let's kind of say we want the row, we want to have columns, because a row will have multiple columns, and we want to have the index, just so we could kind of, I'll show you what I'm using index for. And this component is going to return the column that we want to show here in the table row. So we're going to, this is going to return a table row. And inside the table row, we're going to return, first of all, table data. And what I want this to be, I want this to be the count for the item. So we're just gonna do super easy index +1. So what this is going to do, it's going to return the count on the left. So right now it's not going to show anything, but when we have the items here, it's going to return 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. So that's going to return the count. Next, what we want to do, we want to iterate through all the items that we're passing into it, and we want to show all the columns with the data that we're going to get. And so how are we going to do that? I'm not sure. Let me just right now see what this does. So right now we're returning, like in theory, let's slow down. Let's slow down. So we have our table row here. Let's use it and see what happens. So let blah, 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 blah. Let's go back to our table. So we have our table head. What we're going to do here, we're going to do our T body, because this is where our oh my God, come on, Paul. And here we want to, inside the T body, we want to return our table row. So we're going to get the data from our source data prop. So let's do source data dot map, and I don't know if we need the index. Do we need the index? So we're passing an array right now for source data, and that array has a bunch of numbers, but it's going to be an array of objects that we're going to do. And so let me show you here for now. I'm just thinking, trying to kind of, so dashboard. So right now we're passing our kind of array of items, but in the more reality, it's going to be an array of objects. We're going to have an ID, let's say 1. We're going to have a title, oops, not it, title, project name, project 1. You're not reading my mind well enough. Description, we don't have description, but I like that. Let's do description to make this table much easier, and this will be description. And then for now, I'm just going to remove all of these for simplicity. So the idea is that we're passing an array of objects, and let's do like a couple more here. ID2, and this is where the Copilot is super smart. Like, I hate typing this stuff, but when you need to generate some dummy data, Copilot is just able to kind of read your mind and be like, oh, it makes sense. You want something with an ID of 3, project 3, description, this is project. And so, and then, you know, it wasn't smart enough. I wanted this, 1, 2, and 3. So at least we have some dummy data here. And so what we want to do when we pass the source data, we want to iterate through this data and generate the rows with column of ID, title, and description. So before getting too carried away here, let me go back to my table. And we're going to come back to here for now. Let me just kind of slow down. Source data, we're just going to have nothing happen here. Return, actually, let me just do this. Return H1. Hello world. Hello. There's a little something I'm missing. Source data, okay. H1, okay. No. I need like a better bracket extension here. I think that's good. So So we're going to map through our source data. Let's just console.log item. Let's see if this works before we get too far here. It's complaining about this. Because why are you complaining? Our reporter expects a return value. Okay. Return h1 item.name, and let's see. Like nothing happens yet, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So what we want to do is we want to return, and that's kind of interesting why nothing happens there. Why nothing happens here, I'm kind of curious. Let's console log, because we should have source data here. Let me console log console.log source log console log source data. Let me back up here so it's not crashing. Source data, we have source data, we have items here. And is it because maybe, yeah, but it's not returning it, but we'll get there, we'll get there. Let me take a look. Oh my God, 5 minutes, you could not see my screen. I am so bad, I apologize for that. Hopefully now you could see my screen. So I'll kind of show you and talk about what I did. I hope a bunch of people probably left, but excellent. Thank you for letting me know. Paul forgot to just call him. Yes. I'm using one screen right now, so it's kind of annoying because I'm traveling. And so I apologize for that. Yeah, and bro, I am traveling. It's really hard for me to do anything. Paul is deep in the code. I'm deep in something. For sure. But I think we're back now. Again, let me know if there's issues. So basically what we did here is, let me back up here. Not sure how far ago we were. So we created this table row element or component that's going to allow us to basically display the row based on the data that we pass into it. We're not using it yet. Then we went to our table element, or component I should say. This is what we did before. This is what's generating the T header. And now we want to show the T body. And what we want to return is we want to return table row. And maybe it's not working yet because this should be table row, but we're gonna get to that in just a second. Let me just test this. Refresh maybe. Source data, console log return, T body. Let me do a sanity check. WTF. So WTF works. Let me just make sure that, yeah, let me know if you guys still can't see me. I'm like super paranoid now. So why like we're mapping through this item. We should be returning item.name because we have access to item.name. Let me just, maybe we don't have item.name. Let me console log here. Oh, we don't have item. See, this is where Copilot gets you trouble. Recommend stuff, that's not true. We have title. That's what we have here. And let's go back here. And so now we have our title, project 1, project 2, project 3. And then what we want to eventually, we want to also have all the other items that we have in each column. So we're going to take care of that in just a second. But what we're going to do here, instead of using a table row, we're going to pass that table row component that we're created. And inside the table row, we're going to pass our props. We're going to pass the row. We're going to pass our columns. And I'll show you where this is going to come from in just a second. Columns, and we also going to pass the index, so we have access to, and I could actually remove this like this, because we're just going to use that component. And then we also want to pass the index, which is going to be our index. Index. All right, and so let's see, we have our item here. This, well, item, I'm actually referring it to row. And then we have access to our index. So we getting our row data. And now what we want to do, we're passing our columns. Why are we passing our columns? Because we're going to iterate through our columns in order to show all that other data. But I'll show you that in a second. Let's import our table row component. And if I'm confusing, that's because I'm confused too. I'm trying to figure this out to make it work. So, you know, my brain is like slowly like kick, trying to tick, makes sense. Yeah, you literally are seeing Paul write code in real time. That's why I'm slow and my brain hurts right now, and make comments. A lot of people don't like, it's very hard to code live code, especially when you're not prepared, because you run into a lot of issues like I'm running into right now, and you're constantly trying to figure stuff out. You could actually remove this, and it's not glamorous, it's not perfect, but the beauty of this is that you guys see the reality of coding. It's not like you sit down and all of a sudden you make something really beautiful and perfect. So now what we need to do, we need to populate ID, the project name, and the description here. So that's what we're going to do next, and this is going to happen inside the table row, and we're passing our row data already. We're passing number of columns, which is 1, 2, 3. We're actually passing the actual columns, and we also passing the index because I want to use that index for something. So we know that's working. So let me remove this. So now let's go to our table row component and let's console log all this stuff. Console.log row, columns, and index. Come on. Don't. From table row. So let's take a step and see what's happening. So from table row, what are we getting? We're getting all the columns that are coming via the children prop. We're getting the actual data for the columns, which is ID 3, project 3, this is project 3, and we have all of them there. And then we're also getting the index that we're using to populate this count. So now let's figure out how are we going to display the rest of the columns by mapping through the items here. And you know, like I love how Copilot is trying to help me out here. So yeah, so it's telling me to, I'm kind of curious what it's going to tell me to do. Actually, let me see what it's recommending. It's recommending like some crazy nonsense. Return row column. I'm actually curious what this is going to show here right now. And see, here's a prime example how it does absolutely nothing. So thanks, Copilot. So as you can see, like Copilot is not going to solve all your problems. Listen, I can't even catch up with my brain of what's going on today. I just hope that we could have some sort of working example and see what happens. So we basically want to right now to iterate through the columns, and we want to show all those items. So we're going to have our columns kind of like, you know, Copilot recommends. We're going to map through them. And then the thing is, when we're mapping through the columns, we have an object inside there which like here, like let's console.log column. Let's see what we got. Console.log column. I'm just curious here. And let me remove this one here. So notice we get each child. So we get each child that we are passing, and that and then let me kind of see what row is again. Let's go to table row. So we're getting the columns. We're also getting each individual row. And so we want to, let me console.log the row again. Again, the reason why we're doing this is because we want to have a dynamic table, and we don't want to physically name the things. And so the row returns each individual object. So we don't know which row that we're in, or do we? Row dot ID and row dot title. No, there is no author. So we got let me kind of try something here. Why did this is not what we want. My brain is going to explode for sure. For sure. So we have a column. Console.log column. So column name, row column name. That's kind of interesting. So I'm gonna console.log that column name. That's undefined. So Copilot, you're messing me up and you're making it hard for me to think. Let me first check the chat here. No, we're good. We're good. So console.log. Oh wait, column doesn't have a title, it has a name. Column has a title. And so I want to look up and get the data for that individual row. Let's see what happens here. I'm just kind of curious. Kind of curious. Column. All right, so so the column is each individual child that we are passing. And each child is a column, but we also have a row, and the row has the data. So I think what we need to do is we have to look inside the row and find the column that we're in. I think that's what we got to do. Const result equals, let's map through the keys in the row. And what we want to do in each of those keys, we want to find the key that matches the, oh, my headphones unplugged. The source. I'm kind of curious here, like try to figure out, because we want to make sure that we iterate through all the column objects. Hey Paul, discuss advanced stuff, Redux, Stunk, Redux, Persist, Action Creators. We'll work on that when we get there. I think right now I'm just working one step at a time, and that is like pretty advanced. And for now, we don't need any of those solutions for this application. So for this application, I am not going to talk about Redux, Redux Stunk when you use it, Redux Persist and Action Creators, because at the end of the day, you got to remember, we're using GraphQL here, so we don't need Redux to manage state because our state is managed with GraphQL. So in our case, for this application, this is not going to be a thing that we need. And so we have the keys, object keys. Let me slow this down a second here. Let me slow this down. I'm kind of curious here. Console result. So the keys are ID, title, and description. So I think we want to and then columns, props.source. I think we have, let me see here. We have columns, prop.source. Okay, so here we go. So we have the row which has ID, description, basically has the keys. So if you look here, notice you have ID, title, and description inside of our row where the data is. Now what we want to do, if you look at the column, props our source is the name of the keys of the data that we want to show. So we basically want to find, so let's do, we want to find key that matches column dot props dot source. And I believe that's going to return that item. So console result. Let's see it here. So we got ID, title, and description. ID. So if you look here in a dashboard, we want to be able to look up the data based on the source name. So we have ID, title, description. That's why this is ID, title, and description. So what we're doing is we are iterating to the children, we're getting the source, and we're using the source to look up each individual item so we could display it. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys, because it's barely making sense to me, but that's what we're doing. That's what we are doing. So let's go back to our table row component here. So we're going to return our hold on. Let me do it here. We're going to return our table data, and it's going to return the row, and that's the object that we're passing that has the ID and the data, the title and the data, and we want to look it up based on the result, which are the keys that we have. Did I not spell result correctly? No, why is that complaining now? Why? Oh. Don't complain. Why are you complaining about the result? I don't understand. Oh, because we need to put it in these brackets. And now, miraculously, it works. So notice how now dynamically we're able to pass the data. My God, this was a pain in the butt. Pain in the butt. So we created a table which we could now dynamically pass whatever data we want. So currently we have ID, project name, description. We have the ID for the project. We have the project name. And so what's interesting here, based on this, maybe we have not ID, but we have user ID, right? User ID. And it's something weird like, you know, weird numbers. And if I say source is user ID, the way we set up our table column, it's going to, based on the code that we wrote, know that and show the mapping for user ID and show the IDs here. And let me just put random numbers here. So as you can see now, dynamically, like I don't have to, like, I just point to the source that I want to see, because we never know what we're getting from the database, right? We don't know what the name is going to be. And so now the way we set up our table, whatever this data that we get back, maybe this is not a title, maybe this is user name, right? Paul, user name, Bob. And maybe instead of description, it's got email. Bob, no, Paul at email.com. Email Bob at email.com. And we'll just remove this one because I'm too lazy to type it. Actually, I'm curious what Copilot will recommend. User ID, username Paul. I already have a Paul. Copilot, you're not smart enough. Get the hell out of here. I thought you were going to make up some crazy names like Vanessa. So now if you look at it, you're like, Paul, but it doesn't show like the thing. Like it shows the ID. Yeah, of course, because North Star object, we now have username and email. So now we have to define that in our source. Not define, but say the name that we want to look our items up. Email. And this is going to be name. And email. And notice we have ID, name, and email. And now if we want to add an extra field, like it's super easy. We just throw another data column. And let's say this is phone number. Phone number. And so notice how our, make sure you guys can see it. It'll be very stupid embarrassing if you guys missed all that. Notice now how our table is very dynamic because now I could do phone, and then the phone could be that. Let's do another phone here, and then we'll put another phone. And now notice how, let me refresh this. Phone is not defined. Phone is defined. Relax here. And notice now we have a very dynamic basic table that doesn't care what data we provide. So if we, which in the next video I'm going to, actually let me look at the time here. So we have 15 minutes. We could do something super simple. I'll do it in the next video. I think this is enough. So source data and source and label is the names we gave it for us to be able to dynamically pass the data. So let me just walk you guys through the code here. So let's look at the implementation here. And just so it's less confusing, I'm gonna Control X this, go to the top here. So let's assume this is data that we're getting from an API. And so we're going to pass that data to our table. So source data, basically, this could be named cupcakes, whatever we want. We just called it source data because this is the data that's going to come from the API. So we made a call to an API, which we'll do next time. But for now, I hard-coded everything. And we don't know if this is going to be user ID, username, or email, right? It could, or if we do know, but this could be user or ID. This could be something else. So we wanted to make a table that's dynamic enough where if this is the data, and I'll show you a great example here. So let's do this. Data 1. Actually, this is going to be good to kind of see it here. Data 2. And this is going to be, we're going to call it unique IDs. That's going to be the name here. This is going to be car model. I'm really bad with cars, so don't kill me, guys. Model. Toyota, or I guess that's the make. Who cares? Mazda. I don't really care about cars. I'm just going to delete this for now. Just so like it doesn't matter. So notice how we have two items. We have data 1, which has user data, and I'll just call it user data. And then this is going to be car data. And so now we have two different items that we get from our API. We get user data and car data. So instead of having to rewrite the form and make it specific to the data that we get, we don't really care because we're able to say what's the source, which will be basically what's the key. I guess I could have called it key, but key already exists in React. And then label is what do we want to call it in the header, like basically in the top. So now check this out. I could have a user table, super easy. Let me just say card data and user data, okay. Because here I'm just going to pass user data, right? And now that's going to work. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another table. And this is going to be card data. And right now, card data is not going to work, right? Why? Because in card data, look at the signature here. We have unique IDs and car model. So all I have to do now is I don't have to do anything much. I just pass the source for the object key that I want to look up that data. And I think this was car model. Is that what it was? Car model, right? And so now, notice that shows the ID and the car make, and the label basically changes the name. So this is car ID, whatever I type here. This is cookies and cake, whatever it is. I'm just showing you that label is user defined, will be defined. So notice how now we're able to easily create multiple tables regardless what data we have, because we're able to define the key. We're able to, the hell's my table go? We're able to define the key name that we look it up. And then next week I'll show you how to basically use what we created today and get it from an API. And now we have a very flexible component that basically we're able to show the columns that we want. Like for instance, maybe I just want to show username and email. I could just delete it and look, it's just going to show those items, right? So it's a very flexible table. Now of course we could add additional functionality, but this is just a very simple, maybe not so simple example of how you could have now multiple tables showing completely different table data, but we don't have to do anything outside of the initial work we did for our table component. So to kind of review, let me kind of go back here, look at the comments here. To kind of review, and I know sometimes like watching someone's code is boring as hell, and people like, what the hell, what are you doing? And I just want to showcase you guys that, look, like I just want to make this live because I want to share with you guys coding a project live, so you guys could see that, like as a developer, even I struggle, and it takes work and effort, and I get stuck and I have to look stuff up. And at the same time, it'll give you a more realistic approach. Also, I shared this code on my GitHub. You could always see it. And so like the point of watching me code and watching me struggle and suffer, I hope it gives you a realistic expectation of what to expect. And so you guys are not shy about building your own project, even though like you will be stuck, because all of that is normal. But anyway, let's review the code that we wrote. So the implementation we basically made a very generic table component to which we pass our columns as children, and then we pass the data source, which could be whatever data from the API. Notice we have user data and card data, and notice our tables have different type of data that they're displaying, and it's very easy for us to do dynamically. So we created a table component. Let's take a look at the table component, and what the table component, what it does, it gets our children, and then it gets our source data. What we're doing is we're building out our table header here by iterating through the children and getting the props.label, which is basically this. So we're iterating through each individual item, we're getting the label name, and that's what, let me go to table, and that's how we build out our table header, which is the top portion, ID, name, email, and phone number. Now to build out our table body, what we're doing is we're generating a table row here, which is our component. Basically, it returns the table row with all of our data. And what we're doing is we're passing our children, which has the props that we need to identify which key to use for the row that we want to display. And basically what we're doing is we're using all the keys in a row, and we're looking up that column prop source, which is the label. Let me go to that. So we're basically looking up the source. It's not the label, the source, and then let's say we have 1, 2, 3, 4 items. So we're iterating. We have user ID, username, email, and phone. And what we're saying in our table row, if source matches, user ID, like for instance, let me back up here. So we have, if user ID, which is the source, when we iterate through the data, matches the user ID, show this number. If it matches username, show the username. If it matches email, show the email. If it matches phone, show the phone number, and so on. And that's basically what table row does. It basically goes through our data that we're getting from an API, and then it goes through the children, and then it'll basically find the row that we need, and then here we go, we display the data. And so now we have a dynamic table, and I know it's ugly as hell, we'll fix it later, but we are now able to easily add a table with different data. Let's say we now have a table with recipes. So let's say I go here back to my dashboard, and I'm going to make another object. And again, this could be, I don't know how you spell recipes, data. And it's our recipe data, right? And then we have our rest ID, let's do some weird number, whatever. We have recipe name, and let's say recipe description. So notice recipes, description. This is a description. And so let's add another item here. Recipe 2, recipe description 2. So now notice how we have a totally different data that we want to use. What's it complaining? Oh, I forgot to close this. And we have totally different keys. But the way we set up our table, that's perfectly fine. So if I want to add an additional table to use that, right? I'm just going to copy and paste this right now. All I have to do is just pass the data that I want, which is our recipes data. And then our table has access to that data. And then I just say, to look up that data, use these names for keys. And so a recipe data, let's take a look at the keys that it has. We have res ID, res name, and res description. So let's kind of go here. We have recipes. I don't know how to spell, so don't worry. Then we have what do we have? I already forgot. But you guys get the point. You see that it's very easy for me. Res name, recipes name, and then we have another table column that we'll add. Jesus Christ. Which will be recipe description. So now if you take a look, hold on a second. Oh, I did it in the wrong one. I did it in the card data. Stupid me. Control copy, Control Z. We want to do it here. Let me paste that code in. And this is recipes data. Recipes data, right? Is that what we called it? Yep, recipes data. And so now, let me just double check here. There's some naming convention that's run. So source, res ID, res name, res description. Just got to make sure that we're matching res ID, res name, res description, res ID works. So somehow we're misspelling something here. Oh, I'm stupid. It's C. But now, anyway, like it's just late here. Notice now we got recipes, recipe 1, recipe 2. This is description, this is description. So now we don't have to build out another, now we have to we don't have to build out multiple tables. We have one table component that allows us to display multiple data. Notice how we're able to display users. We're able to display cars. We're able to display recipes. And then we could do bugs or what have you. So that's kind of the idea here. So let me look at the comments before I go here. I know it's a lot of work, and I know sometimes it's hard to follow, but over and over, just little by little, you guys will be able to kind of start making sense of it. And again, I share all this on GitHub, and you'll be able to see the code as examples. And so mapping the data, let me just show you that. That's a great question. So where we're mapping the data, so notice we have our table column, and we're passing the ID, right? We also have access to recipe data. I'll show you where. So when we go to our table, we have access to our children, and we're passing those children to our table row. And the children are the ones that have the keys that we need to be able to map to the data that we're passing. So see our table here. We're passing our children, and we're passing each individual data item from the source data. You see source data here. We're mapping through source. We call it row, and we have access to the row. And so what we're doing inside the table row, this is where we are finding from our children the name of the item, and then we are looking through the row, which basically is this. This is one row, this is another row, and based on the children source, user ID, username, right? Children source, user ID, username, we are finding that and displaying that. So I hope that helps. I know it's a little bit confusing, but I don't think that's oh, thanks again. I didn't share my screen, so let me back out. Brian, thanks a lot. Thanks, Engine Boy. So let me go through it again. It's perfectly fine. So basically, the way we're mapping through the items, I'll use this as an example. We have our table. We're passing our source data, which is the data we get from the API here, right? And we also have these children. So we have the data, and we have the children. Inside our table component, we are iterating through the data that we got, and we are, for each item, we're going to create a table row. Row is each single item. So this is one row, second row, And the columns that we're passing are the children. And the children have source as prop. And we're basically matching source, which would have user ID. And then we look inside the row. And if source and user ID matches, show the user ID. And I'll show you that where that is. So this is our table row. We go to our table row. So notice here, we have access to the row, which is each object data that we get from the API. Columns is our children that we get from our table component. And basically what we're doing is we check the keys inside the row, and we check our children source. If the source matches the row key, show that data. So if our source user ID in our data equals to user ID, show the ID. If our source was like if username, right? We call it username, show us username. So if I change this to something else, it's going to break it. It's not going to show, notice how the name is missing. Basically, this is just a way for us to look up the data that we want to display. Notice now it's showing it in our user source data. I know it seems confusing a little bit, but I like this pattern a lot because as you could see, we only have one table component, which is flexible enough to show three different types of data. We have users, we have cars, and we have recipes, but it could be whatever. And what I want to use this table for, which I'll do it next time because we already built it, and I'll style it a little bit better next stream, but I want to create something for bugs, where basically I have an example of the data structure. And before I go, I'll quickly show it to you guys here. Actually, let me, I want to email the stuff for me. I'll show you an example because I was thinking about it for this bug tracker that I want to make. Let me go to Gmail. So I already have test data for a bug, and I want to show you that it's super easy for me now to basically plop that data in and have a table just show it, right? So let me just show you here. Let me go to Gmail here. Go to Little Paul. Yeah. Hold on a second. Let me just quickly get the data that I want to show you guys. Just to kind of show you how flexible our table now. So let me paste this in. So this is data for bug tracker data, bug. So now for me, it's super easy to create this table and display this data. So I'm going to show you. We created this component. I know we have a lot of tables, so I'm actually gonna, don't cry guys, I'm gonna delete a bunch of these examples because at the end of the day, it's gonna be our bugs. What did I call it? Did I call it bug data? Bug data. So I'm passing bug data source, and now for me, it's super easy. All I have to do is match my keys in the return from the API. So we have ID, title, start date. I'm just gonna copy and paste this, just so it doesn't go too far. So let's see, we have ID, right? I just say ID, and this is what's going to look it up as from the object that we're passing in our bug data. It's going to iterate through each item in the bug data, and it'll see, find the thing that has ID, show the ID, and I'm going to say bug bug ID. Then we have title. Just say title, whatever. Then we have start date, when someone started the bug. Start date. Then we have our due date, when is the bug should be due date. Then we have status. Actually, let me assign to Paul. Actually, let's see here. Let me check the data. Oh, okay. Assign. Okay, it just didn't copy and paste that part, but it has the data. Anyway, and now I'm able to say due date, do table column status for status, and then last one, do table column source. Okay, assign. And so now when we go back to our screen here, notice how now the table just works and we're able to see the data that we're getting from the API. We have the title, start date, due date, status, who's assigned to. And so basically the point that I'm trying to say is we now have a very flexible table that we could reuse regardless what data we get. So I know it's like a long stream. I know it's kind of getting stuck and banging my head a bunch of times. And regardless if you understand the example or not, like I struggled through it even today, so don't worry if you understand that, but I just wanted to showcase some examples of how you could create and write React where you create a component that is truly dynamic enough that you could use it with whatever data that you want. So before I go, guys, before I drive 30 hours, by the way, guys, if you haven't smashed the like button, smash the like button, because tomorrow I'm going to drive, maybe not 30 hours all at once, but I'm going to be driving to Connecticut, which is 30 hours of driving. And so it's going to be crazy, but I wanted to get this live stream in to make sure that we at least do something code related. And Engine Boy is asking me about bug tracker. So I have a private community. And Ivan, thanks so much. I'm just some dude who's just trying to do this whole thing, and I don't really care what people think about me. I just want to show you the reality of coding when you're starting out or been doing it for a little bit, where you don't think that you have to make these crazy applications with no mistakes where everything just works. No, it's a struggle. It takes time. And so thank you so much for your support. I love the stream. If you keep doing this all the time regularly, it would be nice to have co-working stream. Yeah, no, definitely. And if anybody wants to do a stream with me live and come on, let me know. Like, you could email me at codingafter30@gmail.com, and I'd love to do some stuff together. Perfectly fine. Also, I have a community that eventually is going to be paid. Before you guys complain, oh, paid community, WTF, it's going to be $2.99. It's just basically a way for me to get free coffee out of you guys. I'm not even going to lie to you guys, but we have this private community. Do I remember my own password? And basically in this community, it's kind of to hold everybody accountable, to make sure that everybody's doing the work. I post resources, and we are going to be building a bug tracker here. We going to have these sections where you're able to ask questions. I'm going to put lessons here that are not going to be on YouTube here and give you guys assignments. And eventually this community is going to, we also talk about, like, basically anybody who's in this community. Let me make sure I'm sharing my screen here, which I'm not because I'm a fucking idiot. Let me share my screen here. So I have this community, and the whole point for this community is to help you guys go through the steps that I took to be able to get hired. And this is what I talk about, like, you know, getting the basics up, building basic projects, and the importance of building a cornerstone project, which is significant enough, which has authentication, full CRUD, and everything else, then a bunch of other benefits. But anyway, I want to build and do a community project here, the bug tracker, that we're going to use, you know, JavaScript, REST API, React. We're going to use Strapi initially for our backend, but eventually we'll create our own backend with Node. Eventually, not anytime soon. But this is where I'm going to answer your questions on this community. I'm gonna share lessons that are gonna be video lessons that are not gonna be on YouTube, and I'm gonna give assignments so you guys are actually going to do the work yourself. And so a lot of people ask me like, Paul, how can we support you? How can we like help you out? And so I created this community. Right now, like, the only way to join it is by invitation, and eventually I'm going to charge money. I'm not even going to lie to you. It's going to be $2.99, which is basically a Starbucks coffee once a month. And I did want to add some value. And so the value is we're going to, outside of all this other stuff that we have here, we're going to be building a bug tracker app together. And so if you're kind of curious and you're like, well, like, I want to support you, but I didn't set up payments yet. And so if anybody who wants to jump on for free while I'm trying to figure out how to charge you guys money, what I've been doing is, if you email me, and I put my email earlier, codingafter3rd@gmail.com, you need to either send me your GitHub link, which has some projects you've done, or a link to a portfolio project that you built. Like, you actually have to show me that you're doing the code and doing the stuff. And if you show me that, then I'll add you to that community, because at the end of the day, that community, I want it to be for people that actually coding, doing the work. You know what I mean? Not just talking about it. And this is why I do this Tuesday night live stream. I don't care if I fail live. I don't care if people make fun of me. I don't care if I'm embarrassed, because I want to show you the reality of coding, and also show you this idea that if you do a little bit every day or consistently over a long period of time, you're going to make progress. I mean, yeah, we've been doing this stream for a while, but if you take a look like at our application, outside of this ugly data table that we made, but we created, our front page, which allows you to like or dislike items. You could see details for those items. You could check out live demo. You could go to the links. If you logged in, you could leave comments. You know what I mean? This is the functionality we already added. We have this dashboard section that is ugly as all. Eventually, we're going to make the dashboard look like this. And this is where I get my inspiration for the UI from ThemeForest. But we're slowly making progress. We're able to add projects. Today, we made the ugliest form possible. We're able to log out. We have forgot password if you forgot your password. So we have all these different functionality that's starting to make this application actually be something. We even have the blog section, which uses Markdown to write your blog, that's transpiled to HTML, that again, we have to style this, but you're able to style. So we're slowly making progress. And the whole point that I wanted to say for you guys here is that we have this stream where I'm building stuff. And regardless if people show up and they troll, regardless if people show up and they enjoy, regardless if it's raining or not, I'm still going to continue to build this project, because I want to show you guys that at the end of the day, you guys have to code. You guys have to build the project yourself in order to get hired, in order to get a job. You have to do the work yourself. And I wanted to share with you my journey of how I'm building this Dev Hunt website that I'm going to build over time, that I'm eventually going to put in my portfolio once it's good enough. And to show you that you don't have to be an expert to get started. You just have to do a little bit every day. And so hopefully this motivates you to actually code yourself. But with that being said, if you guys don't have any other questions, I want to say thank you so much for dealing with me today, because I am in the process of moving, so I don't have my normal regular setup, different mic, I only have one screen and all this other stuff. So how to sign up into Dev Hunt, send me your email, Engine Boy. So for now, I don't do for Dev Hunt right now to sign up, because it's still like an alpha, doesn't work. Like, I'm not letting people sign up on their own. But if you want to sign up and help me test the application and find issues with it, which is, by the way, is a lot, send me like your email. Basically, like, I could manually add you here, right? So I could add new users. What I need, send me your email, and I'll make some password to you. I'll let you know. Send me your, like, you don't need all the information, but send me just your email, and I'll be able to create a user for you. And then eventually, you'll be able to add your YouTube, your LinkedIn, when you build the projects. So currently I didn't add that feature, as you could see in our application. I'm realizing I'm not sharing my screen again like an idiot. But yeah, just send me your email. And basically, currently, there's no way to add yourself to this application because this is like pre-alpha. It's not even alpha. But if you want to help me test, I could add you via Strapi, right? Just send me an email. And if you're already part of the community, I'll put a post there. If you guys want to help me test this application, I'll create some users for you. And what you guys will be able to do at this point, you'll be able to log in. There's not too much insane functionality, right? You'll be able to log in. You'll be able to like other people's portfolios. Basically, it's me. You'll be able to go to dashboard. And currently, you'll be able to just add a project, right? At this point right now. You'll be able to add. So if I want to add something, choose file, like do I have any good pictures here, open. I'm just not even putting stuff. Click create project, and it's uploading the image, so it's taking a little bit. I should put a loading screen here. But once it's uploaded, and currently, and so here's the, and it'll add the projects here. Currently, I'm just, because I want to add pagination, I'm limiting the call to 3 items. That's why you don't see it here. But if you look at Strapi projects, we'll have all these projects that we added. And this is the one that I just added just now. So you'll be able to add projects. You'll be able to upload. And as functionality keeps going, and what I want to do, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to start making this table, I want to make a form and a table where you guys are able to add bugs. Like, oh, I found this thing's not working, or this is not doing. And then have these bugs, and then I'm able to work on these bugs and make stuff work. So I'm going to log out. But that's basically it. But anyway, with that being said, thank you guys so much. No matter how many people show up, I'm going to continue doing these streams because it's helpful, at least for me, to practice coding live, talking about it live, and blah, blah. Hold on a second. And hey, Paul, we can make preview of the uploaded image in form. Yeah, there's a way to do it. I didn't do it yet because I want to make it super simple, but we can do a thing where we could add the image, show that preview of that image, and if you want to change it, you could change it. Eventually, I'm going to add all these additional functionality. For now, what I'm doing is I'm just doing a bunch of like the most basic things that I could do to kind of say it's a functional app, and then eventually we could add more to that. But anyway, guys, with that being said, thank you so much for joining me on this amazing live stream. I don't know if it was amazing, to be honest with you, but my next stream is going to be on Saturday at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk career and what you have to do to get hired. And then on Monday, I do a stream with Coding Addict, John Smilga, on YouTube every Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific Time. So anyway, guys, if you missed it, you could always rewatch the stream. But thank you so much. I think we're slowly making progress, and I just do the stream outside of like teaching you stuff when I can. It's just to show you that you don't have to be an expert. You just have to put in the time, put in the work, and it's okay to struggle and suffer. But you got to start building stuff on your own. And I'm doing it regardless if people make fun of me or not. Like, I do it every Tuesday, and our project is slowly taking shape. So don't give up. Keep it going. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.